Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is Rose's Randoms here, and today we are going to be talking about the first couple of chapters of the book The Only One Left by Riley Sager. Today we're going to be talking about chapters 1 through 9. Okay, and so this is a very interesting book. Let me actually read the blurb for y'all. So it says, now reduced to a schoolyard chant, the Hope family murders shocked the Maine coast one bloody night in 1929. While most people assume 17-year-old Lenora was responsible, the police were never able to prove it. Other than her denial after the killings, she has never spoken publicly about that night, nor has she set foot outside Hope's End, the cliffside mansion where the massacre occurred. It's now 1983, and home health aide Kit McDear arrives at a decaying Hope's End to care for Lenora after her previous nurse fled in the middle of the night. In her 70s and confined to a wheelchair, Lenora was rendered mute by a series of strokes and can only communicate with Kit by tapping out sentences on an old typewriter. One night, Lenora uses it to make a tantalizing offer. I want to tell you everything. As Kit helps Lenora write about the events leading to the Hope family massacre, it becomes clear that there's more to the tale than people know. But when new details about her predecessor's departure come to light, Kit starts to suspect Lenora might not be telling the complete truth, and that the seemingly harmless woman in her care could be far more dangerous than she first thought. All right, so let's just jump into it. So if y'all see me looking at my phone, it's because I have notes here and I can't talk about this book without notes, okay? So here we go. We know that from the blurb that one of this book's main characters is Kit McDear, and Kit was or is a caregiver, and she became a caregiver from I think she was 19 years old because she wasn't really doing well in school and she needed to do something with their life, and so she became a caregiver. However, it starts off that she's coming back from a 6-month suspension. We're not immediately told why exactly. However, her supervisor, whose name slips my mind at the moment, her supervisor actually offers her a job to go work for this woman named Lenora. Now, what we do know is that Lenora's caregiver originally quit her job, but her supervisor doesn't know why, even though Kit asks him why, but he doesn't know why. Also, she doesn't know who the patient is until her supervisor reveals it to her. So even though I'm saying it's Lenora, she at this point doesn't know it is Lenora. However, when she does find out who it is, she's like, oh my God, I don't really want to go there, but I don't really have a choice because I got bills to pay. And so, she finds out where Lenora lives, which is the cliffs at Hope's End. Apparently, this is a very rich property, a rich area. Obviously, again, when she finds out it's Lenora, we get this little backstory of Lenora, which we already know from the back of the book, is that she was accused of murdering her entire family, even though she was not convicted of it. And people even made up a poem about her, which is kind of similar to Lizzie Borden. Like Lizzie Borden took an axe, if you're familiar with that. So it's similar to that kind of thing, and people around town know about her. They know that she was accused of it, and a lot of people have theories, right? A lot of people do believe that she did and other people don't. And one of the reasons why Kit actually believes that she was even assigned to take care of Lenora is because she thinks that Lenora is the only person that Kit could take care of, that they wouldn't mind if Kit ended up murdering her. Neither would her supervisor mind, and neither would the police mind. And that's why Kit thinks that she was actually assigned to take care of Lenora. How true is that? I don't know, but it's a theory. And then we also find out a little bit of why Kit was even suspended, and that's because she was accused of killing her previous patients. We don't know that she did it or not. She was just accused of it. All right, so chapter 2, she goes home to collect her things, to pack up some stuff, to go to start caregiving for Lenora. And she actually lives with her father, and she notes that since she was accused of this thing, her father and her have not really been speaking that much. They doesn't say whether they were on good terms prior to this or not, but she does note that they haven't been speaking much, although, you know, he was like, when it first happened, he was like, oh, this isn't true. But somehow their relationship still deteriorated afterwards, which leads me to believe, I'm sure it would lead y'all to believe as well, that there is some part of him that believes that she did do it. And while I was reading this, I was like, it's such a weird thing. Like, if these are like some random patients that your daughter is taking care of, and you're originally like, I don't think you did it, why in the back of your mind would you think that she did it if you know who and how your daughter is? Which is it was a little weird to me when I read that part. But when I read something further on, I was like, oh, okay, I can see why now he would think that maybe she was guilty, but we'll get to that. Okay, so then she brings her stuff out to her car where she sees her next door neighbor, Kenny, and she tells us that Kenny is only 20 and she's 11 years his senior, which makes her 31. However, her and Kenny have been in this sexual, non-romantic relationship, and she really doesn't say too much more about that except to tell us that, which I'm wondering if this will come up again in the future. However, she then gets her stuff and leaves. She says bye to her father, but you know, her father doesn't really respond. She waits for him to respond and say anything, which she says, you know, would have made her feel better than him saying nothing, but he says absolutely nothing to her, and she leaves and she's on her way to Hope's End. So chapter 3 didn't really have much of note aside from her actually finally reaching Hope's End, and she meets Carter, who is the groundskeeper, who tells her not to believe everything that she hears about Lenora, and that Lenora is a good woman, she's a good lady. And that's pretty much anything of note that really happens in chapter 3. She also does note that, you know, he's attractive and stuff like that. So we know that she's attracted to him for the most part. Okay, then chapter 4 comes. And in chapter 4, she meets Miss Baker, the housekeeper, and she meets Jessica, who is the younger housemaid / housekeeper. So she works underneath Miss Baker. MRS, which we'll find out later why it's MRS and not just regular Miss. So upon speaking to Miss Baker, Kit finds out that Lenora developed polio in her 20s, and she has had several strokes over the last 20 years, which has rendered her mute. And here is where we actually learn a little bit more of why Kit was suspended. So apparently she had left a bottle of fentanyl next to one of her patients, and she's actually supposed to give her patients the dosages, take it, put it in a medical kit, and take the kit with her to her room and put it underneath the bed or in a drawer next to her bed. But she didn't do that. She left the fentanyl next to the patient, and the patient took it overnight and died from this overdose. And so that is why she was on a 6-month suspension. So moving on to chapter 5, she meets Archibald, the cook. And then Miss Baker proceeds to tell her that she's been working there since she was 19 years old. However, after the murders, she decided to leave and she went to Europe to live with her fiance. However, her fiance died. She doesn't say how, but her fiance died. And when her fiance died, she decided that she would come back to Hope's End and she would care for Lenora. So Kit asks her, oh, so if you never got married, why are you Miss Baker, like MRS, right? And not Ms. Baker. And so she says that that's just how they refer to all of the head housemaids. They get the MRS, they get the Miss Baker, and that's why, you know. And I'm wondering, I thought that was a little bit weird. I'm wondering, like, what if she was married to somebody before? What if this is gonna play in to this story somehow? She could be lying. There's no way she worked here since she was 19 years old and she didn't notice anything at all. So all of this is running through my head about Miss Baker as this story goes along. So Kit also learns that Lenora does not go outside, and in fact, she has not been outside in 20 years. So she hasn't had sunlight, like, on her entire body, like direct sunlight, in 20 years. It doesn't necessarily say why, but we could just assume that it has something to do with the murders, her developing polio, her having strokes, like all of that combined, people thinking that she's guilty when maybe she's not, or maybe she doesn't want to get caught if she is guilty. So yeah, and by the end of the chapter, she meets Lenora. And so in chapter 6, we see Lenora is writing the beginning of this letter that is supposedly supposed to reveal the truth of everything leading up to that night and what happened that night. And, you know, Kit is actually present with her while she's writing this letter. So this letter actually reveals some truths about the family. They didn't really seem to be that loving towards one another. We also learned that Lenora really wanted to become a writer, and she was tired of living at Hope's End. She wanted to go and see the world, but she felt like she was trapped at Hope's End, and she was like, how could I become a writer if I never leave this place? So already it's kind of like some incriminating evidence a little bit. Like, as a reader, you gotta look at that and be like, maybe she did something because she felt trapped. She also talks about one specific day where her father had a painter whose name was Peter. He came to paint portraits of her and her sister for their birthdays. I'm unsure if her sister was older than her or if they're twins. She doesn't really say it. Maybe I missed it, but I don't think they say it. But her father hired this painter to do portraits of them for their birthdays. Obviously, they're kids. They didn't really care for the portraits, but you know, that was their gift. And she notes that she was attracted to Peter. However, her sister realized that she was attracted to Peter and decided that she would be all over Peter on purpose just because her sister knew that she liked him. So obviously her sister seems like a jerk already. And it kind of reveals that, okay, there is clearly some type of rift, some sort of rift between her and her sister. Jealousy, competition even. So her father also used to play this game with her and her sister, because the bedrooms in this house only locked from the outside. So what her father would do is he would lock both her and her sister in their respective bedrooms, and whoever lasted the longest without begging to be let out would win. And the winner, their prize, would be to decide how long the other sister had to stay in their bedroom, like how much longer they would have to stay in their bedroom after, you know, they came out from winning. And she notes that her sister always won this game, and she would always have to stay overnight in her bedroom until into the next morning. And no matter how much she cried and begged and screamed to be let out, they would never relent. Her and her sister would never relent. And so I'm like, okay, is this child abuse? This seems like child abuse a little bit to me. And also, like, where was the mother in all of this? Like, her mother seems to be like non-existent in all of this. And so again, now we see, like, okay, the father's type of personality, very unkind, maybe a little bit neglectful, maybe he prefers his other daughter. And again, we see that rift between Lenora and her sister. So the possibilities of her maybe doing something because of all of this, it's seeming to pile up. Further insight into her father, she says that her father actually built Hope's End, built this mansion on Hope's End, and she believes that it's just because he wanted to show off how much money he had to people and how rich he was. And she also briefly mentions that the only person that she pitied in her entire family was her mother. So obviously I gotta wonder what's wrong with her mother and why does she pity her? And I'm thinking, does the father abuse the mother? Is there some type of violence going on here? Because again, when he was doing this game with her and her sister, the mother was just not present. And you would think as a mom, you would be present for that, whether you're like enabling it or telling the father that he shouldn't do it. Like, you would think she would be around, but she doesn't mention her mother being around during that situation at all. So in chapter 7, we learn that Lenora uses her hands to communicate, for example, to say yes or no. In order to say yes, she does 2 taps with her fingers, and in order to say no, she will do 1 tap. And as mentioned before, Lenora likes to write, and so Mary, who was the last caregiver who abruptly left, when she learned that Lenora liked to write, she actually got Lenora a typewriter. And this is the typewriter that Lenora has been using to write out this letter with Kit around. Okay, so also we found out that it's been 6 months and Kit has, gotten accustomed to taking care of Lenora, the ins and outs of taking care of her, all of that. And while she's bathing Lenora, she's speaking to her and she's like, we have a lot in common. And one of the things that she says to Lenora that they have in common is that everyone thinks that they killed their mothers. And so this is where we realize that, that patient that Kit was accused of killing was actually her mom. So what had happened was she actually begged the doctor to give her mother fentanyl because her mother was in so much pain. And even though the doctor said no, by the end of the appointment, she says he was writing up the prescription for the fentanyl. And then 2 weeks later, she overdoses due to the circumstances that Kit said happened. She left the fentanyl there by accident, forgot to take it up, and when she came back to check her mother was dead. And so, she actually apparently, when, speaking with a detective at some point, she apparently admitted that when her mom died, she felt relieved, which is kind of like, why would you admit something like that if people are thinking you're guilty of killing your own mom? But okay. The detective in the investigation also mentions to her that, like, hey, like, you never made this mistake with any other patient, but you made it with your mom. And that's suspicious because at this point I'm kind of thinking like, well, maybe she left it there purposely because she realized her mom was in so much pain and she just wanted her mom to not be in pain anymore. And so she was like, you know what, like, if this is how you're gonna go out, let's have you go out and not be in pain. That's one option. Or maybe her mom wanted her to do that. So I'm thinking that it's one of the two. I don't think that she did it maliciously, but I do think that maybe this was something that she did because her and her mother both didn't want her mom to be in pain anymore. And so this actually brings me back to when her father was like saying like, oh, you didn't do it, but then kind of seemed like he thought she did still. This is why I think that he thinks that she did it, because he probably thinks that, oh, you probably did do it because you didn't want your mom to be in pain anymore. But it would make sense as to why he would probably in the back of his mind think that Kit was guilty. So we then go back to the letter that Lenora is writing, and in this letter she talks about how her mom was once a beautiful woman, but now, you know, she's fragile, she's frail, her eyes are sunken in. She seems like hollow. And by the end of the chapter, we learned that her mom was actually taking huge amounts of this drug that I looked up, and it's a combination of opium and alcohol that's actually meant to relieve pain. And so apparently Lenora's mother was taking huge amounts of this. We don't know if her mom was sick, and we don't know why she was taking this, but I'm assuming maybe her mother was sick and she was taking huge amounts of this to relieve the pain from whatever sickness she had, which would explain why her mom was maybe not around as much when she's recounting these things that was happening to her and her sister, and why she said earlier that the only person she pitied was her mother. Okay, so then we reached chapter 9, and I'm not sure, but I'm assuming it takes us back to the first day, because remember, a few chapters ago, we see that it's been 6 months since Kit has been taking care of Lenora. But in this chapter, it seems like it takes us back to when Kit first started working there, because this happens pretty much right after Miss Baker gives her like this tour of the house, and then the young housekeeper, Jessie, she decides to take Kit on this official tour of the house, showing her all of the rooms that each family member was apparently murdered in. And she says that the other housekeeper, Mary, believed that the mansion was haunted by Lenora's sister, Virginia. That's her name, Virginia. And she says that is why she left. Jessie also has a few theories about what may have happened, including that maybe Winston, the father, actually murdered everyone for whatever reason. But that doesn't make sense to me, because how would he have murdered everyone? But then he didn't murder Lenora, and then he would go back and kill himself. Her other theory, which is something that I was thinking and I forgot to mention, is that maybe Peter, the painter, did it. And one of the things I was thinking about while I was reading that Lenora had a crush on this painter was possibly that the two of them got into some type of relationship, and then maybe she inveigled him to help her murder her family. But anyway, Kit doesn't believe in ghosts, and Jessie goes like, I'm gonna get a Ouija board. And so Jessie makes this big hullabaloo of asking Virginia if she's there, and she, moves the thing around to where Virginia says, yes, she's there. And then at some point the thing goes flying, and Kit is like, what happened? And Jessie's like, stop playing with me. And then she starts laughing, and then we realize this whole thing was all a joke. And Jessie says, no, Mary didn't actually think that the house was haunted, and neither do I. And then Kit is like, so why did Mary leave? And Jessie's like, I don't know, she just abruptly left, but I'm assuming it's because of something really important. Maybe she had to take care of her family, and I'm sure that she'll call me or message me when she actually gets the time to tell me why she left. However, I'm thinking, or maybe she found out something that she shouldn't have, and that's why she ran for the hills. But yeah, that was the end of chapter 9, and that's as far as I have right now for this book. So tell me your theories and what you think so far. I am loving this book so far. I haven't loved the book this much so far in the beginning of it. So yeah, I'm really excited to keep on reading, y'all. So yeah, comment down below what you think is going to happen if you've read it. Tell me your thoughts while you were reading this portion of the book. And yeah, make sure you like and subscribe, and make sure you also share this video, guys. Bye.